Alright, hello once again, this is Jeff Scott. I'm going to be going now over Chapter 11. We're talking HTML5 and CSS3 from Murox HTML5 and CSS3 3rd edition text. Chapter 11 is how to work with forms. We're going to approach this a little bit differently. I'm going to suppose that I want to create a form where I'm going to ask a person information, and this is what I'm going to ask them: their first name, their last name, their address, their city, their state, their zip. We're going to just put phone here. It'll probably be cell phone, but we'll just leave it as phone. Let's see. We'll put in here status. You'll understand what that means in just a couple minutes. Availability. And is there something else we want to put in here? Yeah, we'll put in it, desired salary. All right. So we've got about 10 pieces of information. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Looks like about 10 pieces of information. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and start creating a brand new HTML file. I've seen this act before. Eventually we might put some CSS in there, but I don't really care about it for right now. In fact, we will. Let's just put it in right away. We'll just call it styles.css. That's fine. All right. Then we'll come in here, and we'll add our body. And we'll add our ending body tag. We'll add our ending HTML tag. All right. So that's what we have so far. Then it's going to look a little weird for a bit, but I'm going to grab everything that we did in here. I'm going to copy it to the clipboard, and I'm literally just going to paste it in here. All right. Now I'm not going to save this yet, because if I did, this would look kind of funky. So I'm going to put in here, I want to create a form. So there's my beginning form tag, and then at the bottom will be my ending form tag. And I realize now I forgot one more field I wanted to put in here that was said comments. Okay, so what I want to do is I want all this stuff to come out, but I want it to look fairly decent, and right now it doesn't. So I'm going to come in here and say I want to put in a label, and that label will be for a field that's called first name. Okay? And that label will actually say, here's a surprise, first name. All right. Then I'm going to put in input type equals text, because it'll be a text box. Name equals first name. And I want this and this to always be the same when I'm doing this. Okay, so there's the first one. Now I'm going to cheat a little bit, and you'll see exactly what I mean in a second. All right, now I want to grab last name, and that's going to go in here. And I have to, of course, change this to last name. And I have to change this to last name. All right, I'm going to do a very similar thing with each one of these. Address, 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 city, Now I'm going to put the state in here, but this is actually going to change in just a minute, or the state rather. Just so you know, this is going to change in just a minute. All right. Okay, so now I've got those, so I can get rid of the city and the state from here. So next is zip. So we've got city, state. So this has to be zip. I can put in here if I want zip code, but I'm going to call the field zip. All right, my next field, I believe, was that my phone number? Yep. Zip phone. So next is phone. So I'll put in here phone number. We'll just call this phone. And we'll call this phone. All right, so what's left? Status, which again we're going to change up in a minute. Status, availability, desired salary. So status, availability, oops, I should have went here. All right, so I've got those two, status and availability. Again, this is going to be changed a little bit in just a couple minutes. We'll call this salary, and I'll change this to desired salary. This will also again then be salary. And finally, this last one, which again will be changed in a minute, will be called comments. All right. Now that's the first round of my form. I do want to fix it a little bit. I want to make sure that between each one of these, I put a line break. Now this is, I'm going to show it to you, and there's no CSS, so it's going to look pretty darn ugly when you first see it. You've been warned. We'll make one quick little CSS change, and when we do that, it'll start looking better quick. All right, and again, as always, we'll call this index.html. All right, so let's take a look at our index.html, our form right now, and see what it looks like. All right, not very nice. Okay, couple things we're going to change before we even add any CSS. First thing is we're going to put an h1 tag in here, and we'll call this sign up form. Okay, so that's the first thing. Okay, then at the very bottom, I'm going to add a couple extra BR tags here. I'm going to put a label, and it's going to say for submit, and this one isn't going to have anything in it, just a blank space. I don't have to do this, to be honest with you, but I'm trying to be consistent with everything else I have here. L-A-B-E-L, there we go. And this is going to say input type equals submit, name equals submit, value equals submit. All right, so let's see what I've changed here. Sign up form, I got this. This is going to be fixed in just a minute, so don't let that throw you. All right, that's all fine. But one more thing that I would like to do, and this will help me in the long run, maybe not right now, but everywhere I've got a name equal, I want to add an ID equal also. And the reason I want to do that is so if I want to later, I can use that get element by ID that's available to us in JavaScript. All right, so I'm going to say ID equals, and I'm going to use the same name as I do for the name. That's totally fine. Again, if I wanted to make this a lot bigger, I could put each one of these. So these are the attributes here, here, and here in red, and these are the values for the attributes. I could put each attribute on its own line, but I want to keep this. It's going to get big enough as we get it going anyway. So again, that's got to be ID, and that's got to be ID. Sorry, this is very mundane, very boring, I guess, what I'm doing right here, but I'm not going to stop the tape. I know I watch tapes online sometimes where when people do this kind of stuff, they actually do stop the tape. I'm not going to do that. ID there, ID there. I'm getting there. It's just going to take me about 2 or 3 more minutes. So what do we have left? Availability, desired salary, and comments. So we've got 3 fields left. This should literally take me about 1 more minute. What you'll notice is, whoops, when I go and run this or refresh the page, it will look absolutely, totally, not at all different. I want you to understand that. I don't need the ID for the button. I don't think I will, at least. What the hell? I'm just being consistent here. So I'll put in ID equals submit. Now everything has got a name, and an ID. Name ID, 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 name ID. All right, and I'm going to save. And you'll notice that when I go and refresh, it won't look any different, because all I did was to add IDs, which are invisible anyway. So I'm going to add a real little bit of CSS at the top. In fact, let's put it into our file. It's going to be styles.css. So let's create styles.css. I'm going to say here label block, is that block inline, I believe? Yeah, I'm missing something there. Width 150 pixels, but that block inline isn't right. Sorry, I'm having the old proverbial brain fart here. Block inline CSS, so let's see how we set that out. We say, that's a display inline block. I think that's what I want here. So, all right, I'm going to save this to where we are, and it's style.css. I think it was styles.css. Okay, did I call it styles here? Or yes, I did. So now let's look. You saw what it looked like. You saw what it looked like. Let's refresh and see if it looks better. There we go. All right. The other thing I want to do is I'm going to put in a little bit of bottom padding, bottom margin down here. I think bottom margin, so let's do that. In here, margin. I always get margin bottom and padding bottom mixed up. Sorry. Bottom. We'll put in 10 pixels. You'll be able to tell right away whether or not this worked. All right. So now it's laid out a little nicer. Okay. If I want to do this, I don't have to, but I could just add a couple more things. I could add in here text align right, and I could add in here font weight bold. Okay, and boom. All right, that's pretty much the way I want this to look. All right, so why did I do that? Now we jump back into the book. in our slides. All right, so what we want to do here, we're working with forms. We want to use HTML to create a form that includes any of the form controls, including the HTML5 controls. We'll get into those later. Second, use CSS to format a form and its controls. You saw just formatting the labels how much nicer I made the whole thing look. Number 3, use the HTML5 attributes and CSS3 selectors for data validation. We're going to add that. Number 4, use an HTML form to add a search function to a website. We may or may not do that. Next, describe the use of an HTML form for initiating client-server processing or submitting data to a web server. Okay, we'll talk about that. Number 6, differentiate between get and post methods and how they're used to send a form. All right, number 3 there, describe the use of any of the form controls. Number 4, describe the use of tab order and access keys. Number 5, describe the use of HTML autocomplete required and pattern. We'll get into that in a bit. The next one, number 6, describe the use of regular expressions. Number 7, describe the use of a dual list. And finally, number 8, describe the use of a form that provides a search function for a website. So, attributes on the form element. Okay? Well, first thing we did not do there's name, action, method, and target. So, we didn't put any of those. So we could have said here name equals sign up form, ID equals sign up form. All right, and just so I don't run out of room here, let's go down to the next line. All right, so we looked at the name and the ID, which wasn't even listed there, but we're looking at the name. So what else do we have? Action, method, and target. All right. Action is what do we want to have happen when we click that submit button. And I'm going to say action equals, all right, and for right now I'm going to put in here a pound sign, which means stay right where you are. Don't go anyplace else. Just stay right there. All right. The method we're going to use for this is how we're going to post this. We're going to submit this, and we're going to talk about this, so don't worry about it, but I'm going to put in post. All right. And if I wanted to have a new form here, I could say target equals underscore blank. If I was doing something with a form and I wanted it to come up on a new page, I don't care, so I'm going to leave the target out of there. But you see the name, the ID, the action, and the post. So out of the ones that are listed there, you see 3 out of the 4. Okay. All right. Most input elements have a type attribute. You might have seen that where I said type equal text. They have a name attribute, all right, which is the name for them. None of my fields are going to be disabled, but if I wanted them to be, I could set the disabled property. None of my fields are going to be read-only, but if I wanted those to, I could set them. Let's talk about what I might want to change here. Let's take a look at this again. Well, right now I've got to manually enter the state. That's a pain in the butt. So I'm going to put in here HTML code for a state list. State drop-down list. That looks good. And you can see I've already used one. So I'm going to grab all of this code that they show in here, and it's going to have all the states, including the District of Columbia. So I'm going to put that in. And I'm going to come in here where I have this state. All right, right here where I've got this input, I'm going to get rid of that. Boom. But I want to keep the line break. All right, so there are all my states now. And I'm going to do some tabbing. Tab, 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 tab. Should be able to just highlight all these and hit tab, tab. Let's see. Tab, tab. Yeah, that worked. Good. All right. So what did that do? Doesn't look like it did a whole heck of a lot, but let's look. You saw what the form looked like before, but now let's refresh. Now after state, notice what we have. All 50 states. Now that looks a lot nicer. Okay, so that's the first thing that I want to do right there. So the first name is fine, the last name is fine, address, city, and now state are fine, zip code is fine, phone number is okay, my status is not okay. All right, for status, I want to write down in fact, let's say we're going to put down veteran status. It just came to me. It'll work a little nicer to put that in there for status. So I'm going to put down into here for status, I'm going to put down veteran status. And it's going to be whether or not you're a veteran. Okay? And I can get rid of this now. And just like I said, I'm just got way too much on my mind right now. So I'm going to be occasionally going back here. But instead of CSS layout, now I want to put in HTML checkbox. So this is what I want to set up in here. I want it to look like this. Okay? So I'm literally just going to grab what they have and I'll modify it. Okay? So we'll call this vet. No, we called it status. Alright, and this will be then status also. And this value will be, let's say, we'll make this true, and we'll make this false. And I'm not going to click the checked period on here. And I'm going to put here veteran, and then here I'm going to put down non-veteran. All right, and I don't want that there. So let's see. Hopefully I did what I wanted to do, but we'll find out. All right, veteran status, veteran, non-veteran. Okay, and really, those should be radio buttons, not checkboxes. Okay, so I'm going to reset those to radio buttons. But I'm going to need this checkbox for my availability. So what I'll do is I'll grab that availability that I've got here, and I'm going to put that in here. All right, so instead of status here, that's going to be availability, that's going to be availability, and I want to put it in one more time. If you don't understand, you will. Just take my word for it, okay? You will in just a minute. All right, so we want this to be a radio button, rather. So again, we just didn't hear it. I checked here for this, for the input and the checked attributes. So I'm going to go HTML radio button. And again, I'm going to find the W3 schools. And I'm going to want this. Again, we're going to have to make some changes to it, but it's coming together very nicely. All right. This again will be back to status. This too. And instead of male or female, we'll call this, again, true, and we'll call this false. And we'll say here veteran, and we'll say here non-veteran. Okay, for the availability, we're going to change this. We're going to call this FT, we're going to call this PT, and we're going to call this E. What does that mean? This will say full-time. This will say part-time. And this will say either. Now, we no longer need the BR tag there or the BR tag there, but we need one there. All right, let's see if it's getting even closer to the way that we want it to look. All right, so there's our veteran status, and you can be one or the other. And there's our availability. Full-time, you can check 1, 2, all 3, or none of them. That's good. All right. One more thing we have to change, and then we're done pretty much with the sign-up form. Okay? And that is where the comments is. I want you to be able to enter a lot of different information. So what I'm going to put in here is I'm going to change that. Instead of type equals submit, I'm going to make this, sorry, for comments here, I'm going to make this a text area. All right, its name can still be comments and its ID can be comments. That's fine. And then I need an ending text area tag. Let's see if I did this right or not, because I don't remember. All right, see how that changed to a bigger box? If I want it even bigger than that, and I do because I don't like the way that looks, I'm going to say, I'm going to hit enter here so I've got a little bit more room. And I'm going to say rows equal 8, cols equal 50. And you say, well, I have no idea what you just did. It'll become obvious in just a minute when we look at this aesthetically. Watch this. Okay? All right, so now we've got a text box, a text box, a text box, a text box, a drop-down list, text box, radio buttons, check boxes, text box, text area, and a button. All right, so our form is really coming together. All right. So that's how they set up the form in there. Theirs is very simple. Mine is much more complex. That's what they have. You already see what ours is going to say. Now, when you send a form, you're typically going to see something that looks like this. And this might be very confusing to you, so let's break it down. Subscribe.php is the name of the file that you're calling. All right, then there's a question mark. The question mark and everything that follows is known as a query string. So what that's saying is in the email field, you put in Zach at, and it doesn't know how to show an at sign, so it uses %40, modulemedia.com. So it's saying that's what you put in. And you hit the subscribe button. So that's actually what gets passed. This is the file you're calling, and that's the information that gets passed in what's called the query string. All right. Now, buttons can have types, values, source, alt, height, and width. All right, and that's for different types of buttons. We're not worried about that right now. Our buttons look fine the way they are. Okay? So you can use some of this stuff if you want to. For instance, this would be an image button. So if I wanted a picture instead of what I have, I could do that. All right? Where it says here, button created by the button element, that's kind of what we did. We said type equals submit. And I said input type equals submit, didn't I? Probably didn't say button. I think that should be button, but I don't remember. I'm going to leave it the way it is. All right. So those buttons that they're having you build here, that's what they'd end up looking like. All right. I'm not concerned with that stuff right now. Now we've got several text fields. The text fields all have in their type equal text. They all have a value. All right, they don't have a value, but if I wanted to put something in the box, I could. If I want to make sure that, for example, for the name you can only type in 10 characters, I can say max length equals 10. That doesn't mean that's the size of the box. That means that's how many characters you can type in. If I want to be able to affect the size of the box, I can use size right there. Notice there's autofocus. Okay? And for the autofocus, I want to make sure that when this program starts, I go into the first name field right away. So for the first name field that we saw up at the top, all right, for first name right there, I'm going to type in autofocus right there. What that should do is that should guarantee that every time we start this, notice the cursor isn't anywhere right now. Okay, now notice it is. Put the focus right on that particular element. All right. Now, I'm going to add some more stuff in here because we're going over the stuff that's in here. And I want to go over the placeholder. All right. So I'm going to put that in here. I'm going to have to probably hit enter because otherwise this is going to end up getting too wide. So I'm going to put in here placeholder equals enter first name. All right, so I'm just going to put a bunch of these things in there. So placeholder equals enter last name. All right. Placeholder equals enter address. Whoops. You have to always make sure you close these, otherwise there's going to be problems. And typically, it'll keep running, you just won't get any output. Enter city. Now I don't say enter state because that's that drop down, so I forget about that one. All right. I can come in here, enter zip code, I don't want to worry about the veteran status or the availability, but in here I can put in enter desired salary, and we'll leave, well, we can put something into the text area too if we want to. Doesn't really matter. Enter comments here. And I need that. Now, hopefully I didn't miss any double quotes, etc. when I put that stuff in. I tried to be careful when I looked at it, and I didn't notice anything. Save. Doesn't look any different, but let's refresh. See how we got those placeholders? That's that gray text that's now in here. Didn't seem to like the one I put in here, so maybe you can't put it into a text area. All right. But notice as soon as I click my mouse in there and I start typing, the rest of that text goes away. All right. All right. This is a very decent looking form for considering the fact that we hardly spend any time creating it. Okay. All right, so that's how you can set up text fields. Boom. Radio buttons and text boxes can have a type attribute, can have a value attribute, can have a checked attribute. So if I want to assume, for example, that most of the people want to work full time, as an example, all right, then I can come down here. Let's assume most people are not veterans. Okay, so I'm going to type in checked right there. And let's assume most people want to work full time. So I'm going to type in checked there. All right, then I'm going to refresh. So notice when I do, that now is got the dot and that now is checked. Okay. Again, did I do the placeholder wrong for this, or can't you do a placeholder? Doesn't appear as though it takes the placeholder for a text area, so I'm just going to get rid of this. Why? Because otherwise it's just extraneous text that I really don't need. All right. Here's some code for radio boxes and check buttons. Radio buttons and check boxes. And I could have looked here, I guess, but I went out to the web and found it. So you see what those look like. There are option elements that you can use. You go, what are those? Well, if I wanted, that's pretty much what we did for states. Okay. I can allow one thing to be checked or many things to be checked by setting it equal to multiple. I'm not going to do that. If I want to put in a list box, I can do that. It's very similar to a drop-down list. But the idea is with a drop-down list, depending on how you set it up, you may be able to enter things up here that aren't in the list. With a list box, you show typically you can show everything at one time. And again, let the user choose one thing or several things. The text area, I set the rows and columns. I could have set wrap, which is word wrap. Do I want a word wrap to set type of an idea? All right. So they talk about CSS. I showed you CSS, but I only showed the CSS for the for the label. I want to grab the CSS that they use for the text area. All right. So let's go over to here and let's add that. You might say, fine, Jeff, why did you want to do that? All right. Well, it's much better typically to add your height and width and do it using CSS than it is to go and throw it into the HTML. So now I can remove that height and width from here. My HTML thus is smaller, and this is going to look different because that's sized differently. All right, but it looks fine the way it is. I'll just still leave it the way it is. All right, as I'm walking through the stuff that's in here with you. Let me check my time. Okay, I'm at 37 minutes, and that's fine for right now. Again, this lecture may very well be broken into 2 lectures with all the different PowerPoints there are here. All right, so that's their form. You saw the difference between their form and my form. The for element for the label, I already showed you that. That basically, what that does is it provides a linkage between the label and the associated text box or whatever it is you're linking up with the for statement. That is also another thing that is used by screen readers to know what goes with what. So notice, again, quantity, quantity. Okay, crust 1, or actually that should have probably just been crust here, but crust. Okay? All right. I love this example that they show here because quite often when you do show a form, you show it with creating a pizza because there's so many of the things that you can use in there. All right. Again, use labels with radio buttons and checkboxes and make sure those labels have the for attribute so that the user can click on the label then and it'll show what it's associated with. It says this also helps assistive devices. Well, I forgot to even show you that, but notice what happens if I click on here. It automatically puts me here. See that? Now, is that a big thing? No, but again, it is showing for things like screen readers what goes with what. All right, field set and legend. If I wanted to, I could put a field set and a legend. In fact, I could put as many as I wanted. Let's just put 1. In fact, let's... we already got first name, address. I'll tell you what, we'll make one big one. All right, so I'm going to put here, right there. I really should be tabbing stuff, but I'm just not going to. Field set, and I'm going to say legend, and I believe I put the name of the legend right here. Let's just say name info legend. All right, now I'm going to end that field set right here. I spelled it wrong up here. All right, what changed? Let's look. I goofed up the HTML, so what did I do here? Something I didn't want to do, so just get rid of that. All righty. Field set. Legend. Field set. I don't even know what that D there is. Oh, I lost my beginning form tag. That'll probably help a little bit. So let's look at it again. All right, there's my name info. Don't know why it's like this, but you can see it draw through the box around everything. That's what I wanted to show you. And I probably screwed up the legend, and that might be why it looks funky as it does. So let's look. Field set, and then you have a legend by itself, and it's supposed to look, when you get done, it's kind of hard to tell on here, but these are each in their own box. What I'm going to do, just keep it simple. I'm going to do field set, and then I'm going to have my legend here, name info, legend, just like we've got it. Oh, there's the problem. This stuff that's all right here, all of this, X, that's got to come over here. That was all form stuff. All right, that'll fix that. Now for my field set and all this stuff that's in here, it should now actually look the way I want it to look. Let's double check. All right, it's only around my first name, so I really should have had it around the first name and the last name. So I should have ended the field set down here. All right, so let's look at that. And then we're going to make a change to our CSS. So now we've got name info, and we've got our first name and our last name. That looks good. Next thing I want to do is I want to come over here to my styles, and I want to say, hey, my field set, I want that to be only width of 50%. What does that mean? Let's look. Looks a lot nicer. All right, in fact, I probably could even cut it down to 40% if I wanted to do that. But you see what's happening now. I've got all my name stuff together. In fact, let's do that. Let's cut it down to about 40%. And after that field set, let's put in 2 line breaks. Okay? Then we're going to do another field set here. We're going to have this say city, state, zip info. Okay, so that's going to start there. And we're going to end that after our zip code, which is right here. All right. Now you can have your own feelings as to whether or not I made this form look better or worse. And it's okay either way. But I'm trying to show you some of the stuff that's in here just so you see it. I'm going to cut this down. So now I lost my button. It's still there, but you don't see it on the screen. Because after my field sets, I've got 2 line breaks, right? And I think 1 is sufficient. And get rid of that one. And after my zip code, I can get rid of that one. Save. And let's refresh. Now it still doesn't show that. See, I'm losing that submit button. It's down near the bottom. So where I've got at the very bottom, before the submit button here, I put 3 line breaks. Let's just change it to 1. Let's refresh again. There's my form. All right. Again, come up with your own feelings as far as whether or not those field sets and legends made it look better or worse. But I'm just did it because I'm trying to show you here the different things that are available to you. All right. So file upload control. If we wanted to add a resume, let's say, all right, we could do this. So we could put in here the ability for the user to attach a resume if they wanted to. This example that they're showing right here would allow you to add an image, so if you wanted to upload an image. But what would make more sense in a sign-up form would be something like a resume. I'm just going to leave it off, and I'll let you read that yourselves. So it's going to look like that. So mine would say attach your resume, question mark, and if you click there, it would allow you to bring up a resume. So going back to the book, all right, a form contains 1 or more controls. You should code the name attribute to uniquely identify each form and each control. When the form is submitted to the server for processing, the data is sent along with the hypertext transfer protocol request. For the GET method, the URL is followed by a question mark and a bunch of key value pairs, which are known as the query string. You can use the input element to create 4 different types of buttons. All right, and we had talked about that a little bit earlier. You saw those different kind of buttons that you could create. There are several types of text fields. All right, I didn't show you this, but we just did text. We could have also done hidden, which means it does not show on the form. And we could also have done password if we wanted to put in a password. A normal text field accepts input data from the user. A password field also accepts input data from the user, but it's typically shown as being black bullets. A hidden field, again, is something that gets sent, but is not shown. Okay? Radio buttons, only one radio button can be selected at a time. That was our veteran and non-veteran, so you can be one or the other. You can have as many radio buttons as you want, and if you give them the same name, all right, then with different IDs, then they become a radio button group. The drop-down list is what we used for the states. We coded it as option elements. By default, the first L option in the list is loaded. If we want to change that, we could code the selected attribute. What does that mean? Well, again, let's take a look at what that means. If we assume that most people who filled out our form were from Wisconsin, then for Wisconsin, we could type here selected. You see that by Wisconsin. So what did that do? You say it didn't do anything. It still said we have to refresh our form. And now it's Wisconsin. So we changed the default. All right? All right, we did the text area, which allows you to put in multiple line input. We put in the label. We talked about the label, the accessibility guideline, by using the for statement. The label is used to identify a related field. We did the field set and the legend. The field set is used to group controls. The legend can be coded within the field set to give it a label. All right, and we just talked about the file upload. And again, the file upload allows you to literally do that, upload files if you want to do that. So those are some of the basic skills working with forms. Now let's talk about some of the other skills that aren't basic, but things that you might want to know and you might want to use. All right, there's alignment. Okay, remember when I did display block inline? That made all these line up. And like they have here they did a text align right, and I did the same thing. That's why when you saw mine, it looks like this. All of these things are lined up. They're all in alignment. So that's the HTML from the book if you want to do that. That's the CSS. If I didn't like where the button was or whatever, I could put some more stuff in there if I wanted to do that. That submit button. Here they put additional formatting. Notice they've made the color of their labels blue. So they've done that here. And they also make sure that whatever the active thing is, the thing with the focus, I kind of like what they've done there. So let's take a look at that. Maybe we'll steal a little of this. So the label will come in here. We'll do the same thing, color navy, but I'm going to do that input focus that they have here. And again, if you don't know what it is, keep watching. So we want to put that into our styles, in our label here. And again, the order in which you put these different things does not matter. But I'm going to say color navy. Remember, I could also say color # red, green, blue, or I could say RGB, which stands for red, green, blue, 0, 0, 255. But hey, you know what? Typing navy is easier than doing any of the other ones, so I'm just going to type in here navy. Boom. So that's done. Then at the bottom, I'm going to put in that input focus border 2x navy. What that means is whatever element, input element, has the focus, draw a border around it. And if you still don't understand, let's look and see if we can figure it out. See that? See when I move, how the color changes? So I can always tell what thing in there is active. I like that. All right, and see how my labels in here have also changed? Now that's not a label, that's a field set. So I'd have to go in there and manually or whatever change those. But I'm just going to leave this the way it is. In fact, I am going to do one more thing. Since I've done these, I'm going to go to my H1 tag. And I'm going to say that my H1 tag should also have a color of navy. Alright, so it matches the labels. I like that. And you can see it now does. Okay, it's really coming together. I think it looks pretty nice. And we've been able to talk about most everything that's been in the chapter here. Alright, tab index and access key. Where am I for time? Alright, I can go over these and then we will stop for part 1. Alright, the tab index basically says that if I run this, if I run this, by default, if I run this and I start hitting my tab key, it's tabbing, and you say, well, it's pretty much tabbing in the right order. And that's because that's the order in which I put these things in here. But if I want to make sure that my tab index is always correct, I can come in here and for each one of these, so for instance, I could type here for my first name, I could add to this input, I could add tab index 1, then the next one tab index 2. Mine are already set, but I'm just going to leave it out, but just so you know I can do that. There's also an access key that you can set up, and I'm not going to do that, but if you go, what's an access key? Well, you know how I can do file print like this? All right. I can also do a control P, which brings up the same thing. All right, because that's an access key. Okay. All right, I don't want to do that right now, so I'm just going to leave those. I'm going to forget those even existed, other than the fact that I told you about them. All right, so there's the access key. You see the underline if you want to set that up. And here's the code if you do want to see that. So the access keys, the alignment is shown on page 393. The formatting is shown on 395. The access keys are on page 397. The author says, seeing a proper tab order and providing access keys for users who don't use a mouse. Now that actually is true. All right, so I could provide access keys for all this stuff. I don't want to do that, but actually what I should be doing, and it really, how long will it take me? A couple minutes? I can come in here and I can say tab index equal 1. And I can set the tab index for each thing that's in there, so I'm sure that it's correct. So 1, 2, you'll get the idea. Again, it takes a minute or two to put that in, but I think that in the end, it's worth it. Because, for no other reason, it's because it's the right thing to do. All right. So this will be 5. Not 51. So again, this would help someone who has got some kind of a limitation, whatever that limitation is. All right, I think I put it, when I got this, I put it by the first one, so 7, and I think I can put this here as 8, which will allow me to tab to both of them. Same kind of thing here. So this will become 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and finally 14. save this and I come back here now. It's the way it was set up, but it doesn't look any difference. But notice when I start tabbing, I've got the right order. Everything is in there. That's exactly what I wanted to have happen. Okay, so that should be pretty much enough of that stuff. Alright, we talked a little about access keys and setting the proper tab order. Alright, this is a good place to take a break right here. We'll talk about now the HTML5 elements for data validation. This starts on page 398, and between that and regular expressions and a few other things, it's going to go on to about page 417. And then there's an example, all right, and that'll end the chapter. So let me stop right here, and we'll pick it up with part 2 in just a couple of minutes.